Once upon a time, there lived a woman who never bathed her son from the day he was born. Unlike the other mothers in the village who proudly carried out the tradition of bathing their newborns, Mutundi refused to take part. Days passed, and the villagers waited for her to appear with a calabash of water as the others did, but she kept her child hidden close to her. At first, people whispered among themselves, some saying she was lazy, others claiming she was possessed. Soon their whispers grew into mockery, and they laughed, saying her son must reek like a dead rat. Children were warned not to go near her hut, and families treated her child as an outcast. Mutundi never defended herself, nor did she explain her reason. At night, when her baby cried, she held him tightly and whispered, "My son, endure a little longer. When the time comes, they will understand." Her words only fueled suspicion. The villagers called her boy an abomination, pressing the elders to banish them before misfortune befell the land. Yet Mutundi remained calm. She lit incense and spread sweet fragrances around her home, but still, not a drop of water ever touched her son. Rumors spread that she was a witch. Her neighbor Mina even lied that she saw the boy floating in the hut at night and claimed Mutundi threw out dead birds as sacrifices. Though nothing she said was true, Mina stirred fear and hatred until the people demanded Mutundi's banishment. With her son strapped to her back, Mutundi gathered what little she had and walked into the forest, her heart breaking as the villagers jeered and called her cursed. Mina stood at the front, smiling proudly, eager to claim the land she had always envied. She had never seen anything strange but used lies to rid Mutundi and seize what she desired. In the forest, Mutundi built a small hut and raised her son, Ni, alone. He grew strong and healthy, his skin glowing as if touched by the sun itself. Though never bathed, his body shone with life. From a young age, he showed unusual strength, lifting heavy stones and hunting animals with his bare hands. He became his mother's protector, ensuring no harm came near their home. Mutundi warned him never to set foot in the village. "This is our home now," she told him firmly, and Ni promised to obey. One morning, while hunting, Ni heard a scream echoing through the forest. He crouched low, moving quietly through the leaves until he reached the edge near the village. There he saw an older woman shouting angrily at a young girl, ordering her to clear a wide stretch of land. The girl cried bitterly as she struggled with the work. When night fell, she left the land unfinished and returned home in tears. Ni, remembering how his mother had once been humiliated and cast out, stayed behind and cleared the ground through the night, determined to ease her suffering. Through the night Ni worked silently, his hands moving with the speed of the wind, his body glistening under the moonlight with a strange unearthly strength. By dawn, the vast land stood completely cleared, looking as though many men had toiled there for days. When a duck returned and saw the ground transformed, she froze, her mouth falling open in disbelief. Dropping to her knees, she lifted her hands in gratitude, tears streaming down her face as she thanked the heavens for answering her desperate prayers. She had begged for a miracle, and now it had come. Her stepmother soon appeared, her sharp eyes narrowing at the sight. "Who helped you?" she demanded coldly. A duck swore she had no help, but suspicion burned in her stepmother's gaze. She prowled around, scanning the soil for footprints, shaking her head. "You dare mock me? You are too weak to do this alone. Who aided you?" she thundered, raising her voice until it echoed across the land. A duck trembled, insisting she had worked through the night, but her weak voice betrayed her fear. Hidden among the trees, Ni's fists clenched as anger rose within him. He longed to step forward and defend her, yet his mother's warning rang in his ears, chaining him to silence. He stood still, watching in torment as the woman lifted a stick, ready to strike. A duck cried out helplessly, but Ni swallowed his rage and forced himself to remain unseen. In his heart, he knew the day would come when silence would no longer protect him. From then on, whenever a duck's stepmother burdened her with impossible tasks, Ni returned in the dark of night to complete them. Each morning, a duck wept with gratitude, believing her prayers had been heard. Though she never once saw him, her voice became a melody that warmed his hidden world. Yet Ni never stepped into the light. His mother's command weighed heavily, but fate cannot be buried forever. One afternoon, as a duck bent by the stream to fetch water, her stepmother shoved her violently into the current. The woman stood by without pity, watching the girl thrash helplessly, knowing she could not swim. A duck screamed, her hands clawing at the banks as the water dragged her deeper. Her cries pierced the forest, reaching Ni's ears. Without hesitation, He bolted through the trees and dove into the river. The moment his body touched the water, something beyond understanding awoke. The stream dried instantly, its flow vanishing before his eyes. Trees withered, plants curled into ash, and the land around him trembled. And I, horrified, dragged a duck onto the bank, leaving her gasping for air. Terrified of what he had caused, he fled back into the forest, his heart pounding like thunder. When he stumbled into their hut, trembling and pale, Mutundi's eyes filled with sorrow. She already knew. And I fell at her feet, his voice breaking. Mother, the river vanished when I touched it. Even the plants died. What is happening to me? She placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes heavy with memories. Long ago a strange woman came to me, she said softly. She told me you were born with the power to uncover the true foundation of this village. But that power would only awaken when you met the one whose tears could bring life again. Not tears of pain but tears of joy. Meanwhile, at the riverbank, villagers gathered in shock, staring at the dry earth where water had once flowed. Some fell to their knees, wailing that the gods had turned against them. Panic spread quickly, and whispers carried from one mouth to another. When news reached a duck's stepmother, dread seized her. She rushed to the river, certain the villagers would discover a duck's body. But when she arrived, she found no trace of the girl. The stream was gone, the ground cracked and barren, and a duck had vanished without a sign. Her heart pounded in terror as she realized something far greater than her cruelty had been unleashed. When a duck's stepmother entered the hut that night and found her sitting by the fire, her heart nearly stopped. The girl's body was still wet from the river, yet she sat there alive as though nothing had happened. The woman's chest tightened with terror. She had watched the stream drag a duck away, but now the girl breathed before her eyes. A shiver ran down her spine, and she knew something far greater than her schemes had awakened. That night, while a duck slept peacefully, her stepmother crept into the room with a rope in her hands. Her plan was to strangle her quietly before dawn and claim that she died in her sleep. But as she leaned closer to carry out her deed, a sudden wind swept through the hut, lifting her from the ground and throwing her violently against the floor. Gasping in fear, she dropped the rope, scrambled to her feet, and fled back to her room. At dawn, a duck awoke to find the rope lying beside her bed. Puzzled, she carried it to her stepmother's room, only to discover her paralyzed, her body stiff and her eyes clouded with blindness. Confused, a duck stood at the door until her half-sister, Bumi, walked in. The sight of their mother lying helpless made Bumi scream, her cries echoing across the village. Villagers rushed in, and soon whispers turned into accusations. "This is a duck's doing," Bumi shouted, pointing at her sister. "She bewitched my mother. She dried our river and cursed our land." Others agreed, claiming they had seen her return from the stream soaked in water just before it vanished. Fingers pointed at a duck from all sides as men picked up sticks, eager to strike her down. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she pleaded, swearing her innocence. But her cries only fueled their rage. An old man stepped forward, his voice bitter. "Did you not hear she cleared a vast land in one night? No human could do that. She is a witch." His words ignited the crowd. Some shouted for her to be dragged to the village square, others for her to be stoned. Soon a duck knelt in the square, her body trembling as stones rained down on her. But then the sky darkened as if night had swallowed the day. Thunder rolled, winds howled, and a storm encircled a duck. The villagers stumbled back in fear, unable to approach. Through the chaos, the voice of the chief priest rang out, sharp and commanding. "Fools! You have brought this curse upon yourselves. You stone the innocent and protect the guilty. Now face the weight of your wickedness. The gods are with her, and anyone who dares harm her will perish." The people fell silent, trembling as the priest raised his hands toward the heavens. "This girl you condemn is the one chosen to restore your land. Only her joy can heal the earth. Until her heart knows happiness, the rivers will remain dry, the skies dark, and death will creep upon you." Fear gripped the crowd. They dropped their stones and fell at her feet, begging for mercy. Even the king removed his crown and placed it before her. "Take my throne," he pleaded. "Rule in my place, that the gods may smile upon us once again." But a duck turned away, her voice heavy with pain. "I do not seek your throne. I do not want your crown. How can I force joy into a heart scarred with sorrow? You mocked me, starved me, cast stones upon me. Now you beg because you fear death. Do you think fine clothes or sweet meals can erase the scars you burned into me? Her words struck them like fire. The villagers tried everything to please her. They dressed her in silks, sang praises, offered gold and food. Yet her eyes remained clouded with grief, and the land stayed cursed. Crops withered, children starved, rivers stayed dry. Whispers spread like smoke. What if a duck never smiled again? Bumi watched in secret, her heart poisoned by envy. She could not accept that the sister she once mocked now held the devotion of the land. Wherever a duck walked, people bowed and laid gifts at her feet. Even the king had surrendered his crown. Burning with jealousy, Bumi whispered in the shadows. Why should a duck be the savior? If she were gone, they would worship me as her sister. I would rule in her place. That evening, when a duck walked toward the stream's cracked bed, Bumi followed silently, her eyes gleaming with malice. At the edge of the barren river, a duck paused, her voice soft as she began to speak. Spirits of the forest, you who cleared my farm when I was mocked, you who saved me from the stream when death called, I thank you today, for without you, I would have perished, a duck whispered, her words drifting softly over the dry riverbed. Her gratitude was pure, but Bumi's heart twisted them into poison. Without hesitation, she ran back to the village and returned with elders, eager to prove her suspicions. When they arrived, they found a duck kneeling by the cracked river, her palms lifted in prayer. Bumi pointed at her, her voice sharp with malice. You see, she speaks with dark forces. She is evil and seeks to deceive us all. The elders watched in silence, torn between doubt and fear. One of them reminded the others of the chief priest's warning. If they angered a duck further, their land would fall into ruin. Bumi's face darkened with rage. If you are too afraid, I am not. I will end her trickery and save this village myself, she shouted, charging forward with a knife. But just as she lunged, a figure stepped from the shadows of the forest. It was Enai. His voice calm yet firm as he commanded her to stop. Bumi froze, staring at him in disbelief. Who are you? One elder whispered. Enai raised his head, his words cutting through the silence. I am Motundi's son, the child you cast away long ago. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the truth settled in. They had all believed him lost, but here he stood before them. Before anyone could respond, Bumi's fury boiled over. You see? A duck has conspired with our enemy to destroy us, she cried. With renewed malice, she lunged again, the knife glinting in her hand. But before she could strike, her body stiffened, her limbs frozen as though seized by an unseen force. The knife slipped from her fingers, landing inches from a duck's feet. The people trembled as terror gripped them, the skies above darkening like midnight though the evening sun still lingered. Ni's voice rose like thunder. I am the boy you mocked, the child you called an abomination, the one you cast into exile. Twice I saved this girl. From the bushes you forced her to cut and from the waters where you tried to drown her. He turned to a duck, whose eyes widened in shock. A faint memory stirred within her, the hands that had pulled her from the stream. She had long thought it a dream, but now the truth stood before her. And for the first time, a smile broke across her face, warm and unrestrained. The heavens responded at once. The heavy darkness shattered, the skies cleared, and sunlight pierced through the clouds. It is him, the chief priest declared, his voice filled with awe. Only he could release the sorrow from her heart. At that moment, Motundi stepped out of the forest, her face solemn as she began to speak. She revealed how, years ago, a wise old man had come to her with a prophecy. He told her that her child was no ordinary boy, and she must never let him touch water until the day he met the woman whose tears would heal the land. If he ever bathed, the spirits of the river would destroy him, for he was destined to be their undoing. Ni's eyes widened in sudden understanding. At last, he knew why his mother had never allowed him near water, and why the river had dried when he leapt in to save a duck. His presence had broken the power of the spirits once and for all. As Motundi spoke, her gaze fell on Bumi lying helpless on the ground. In her hand was a bracelet, one Motundi instantly recognized. Where did you get this? Does it belong to Mina? She asked. Bumi faltered, but the truth could no longer be hidden. Mina, her mother, was the same woman whose lies had led to Motundi's banishment, the same woman who once claimed she saw an eye floating in the river, the same woman who had tried to strangle a duck in her sleep. The revelation stunned the crowd. The king stepped forward, his voice heavy with remorse. By the laws of our ancestors, when the innocent are banished unjustly, they must be restored and honored. From this day, Ni and his mother shall be part of the royal family. The villagers bowed in agreement, ashamed of their past cruelty. Bumi and her mother were banished in turn, cast out for their wickedness. Ni and a duck, bound by fate and love, grew close, and in time their affection deepened into something unshakable. The people, once filled with scorn, now surrounded them with honor and devotion. They had learned that the joy of those they had wronged was the key to their own survival. The village flourished as never before. Rivers flowed freely, harvests overflowed, and children thrived. The king himself bowed in respect to them, ensuring they were never again despised. In time, Ni and a duck were wed beneath a sky of radiant light, their love celebrated as the bond that healed an entire land. And so the people remembered, mercy is stronger than rumor, and love more powerful than any curse. Their story was told for generations, a reminder that a single smile could restore life to a dying world.